I just got a text message that said, I think James just said you need to get yourself to the gym. Thank you, James. So I met James on the street probably about 2 months ago, and we were chatting, and I said to him that one of the things I think is missing from this debate about the Internet of Things and connected devices and this kind of brave new world of kind of physical and digital being combined is that people aren't really talking about the boring bits, or at least they're not talking about them overtly. They're talking about them amongst sort of peers, and they're talking about them amongst friends and in the pub. But there isn't enough of a discussion about the things that are not particularly sexy when you start an Internet of Things business or a business around connected devices, products that connect to the web. Things like customer service, things like logistics and shipping and operations, manufacturing processes, lawyers, all of this stuff. And it seems like it would be... So I guess this talk is my way of... sort of trying to start that discourse a bit more overtly. So I'm one of the co-founders of a business called Newspaper Club. Newspaper Club helps people make and print their own newspapers. You can come to our site, you can design a newspaper in our online software, or you can upload a PDF you've made elsewhere, and we'll print anything from 1 to, I think we printed 100,000 recently. There's many reasons to start Newspaper Club. Not all of them were particularly good. But one of them was that for us it felt a bit like a kind of prototype Internet of Things business. A lot of the stuff that we produce is coming from the web. It's content from the web. People turning their blogs into newspapers. People turning we did a brilliant Instagram newspaper that someone just took their year of Instagram photos. And so we wanted to kind of explore sort of an Internet of Things business, but sort of without kind of some of the aspects that were going to be tackled by other people. We wanted to get really good at operations and logistics and customer service and apply that, maybe in 5 years' time to something else. This is very true. The physical world is hard and different, and I could probably spend just 20 minutes just telling you this over and over and over. But we've spent, 4 years trying to learn how to wrangle it, and so I hope that there are kind of a few lessons that we can kind of maybe share that might be useful for other businesses, and encourage them to share their lessons so we can learn from them. Got 4 quick stories, really, about Newspaper Club and our history. Number 1. So we've printed 4 million newspapers, 4.3 million newspapers now, and we've done it really without touching any of the kind of we haven't touched any of the newspapers, really. We've sort of built a production process and a printing process that means that we don't really have to kind of mediate in it at all, other than coordinate all of the actors involved. When we started Newspaper Club, I thought that we could treat our suppliers, our printers and our shipping companies and our fulfillment houses a bit like we treat kind of web APIs. I thought that we could neatly abstract them away into a kind of an interface. We could write some code to wrap around it, and then we could swap them out when we wanted to. They are not the same thing. For us, dealing in the physical world was, coming from a digital background as a technologist, some description, we didn't need like a global integrated solutions network or a massive scalability. We needed an expert to guide us through this kind of brave new world. Our shipping company, Broadcast Freight Limited, started as the roadies of status quo. They decided the roadies of status quo were lazy bums, and they thought they could do it better. And so they effectively the two of them, two brothers, Kieran and I can't remember the other guy's name, effectively developed their freight company out of being status quo's roadies for a decade. I know this because I've had a pint with Kieran, who's the managing director of the company. And when something goes wrong, we give Kieran a call, and Kieran sorts it out. You probably know this law, that a complex system that works is invariably found to have evolved from a simple system that works. You can't start with complex in the same way you can't start with cheap. You have to kind of go from expensive to cheap. You have to go from simple to complex. This is John Gould's law, and it's a great book. And And the way you do that is you understand the process inside out. And you understand the process, the thing, shipping or fulfillment or printing or whatever it is, by doing it yourself first. And then when you can't do it yourself anymore, you make it someone else's responsibility. In our case, we handed our fulfillment, our shipping to broadcast. And you do this when you want to when you want to buy yourself time for your employees, for your team, and sometimes when you want to buy yourself money, although it's not always the cheapest way of doing things. And then when you've developed a kind of process with in our case with a friendly family company like Broadcast, then you can start to automate it away and scale it up. And if you have to go to a FedEx or a UPS or someone like that, then you can. And those people are there and they work very well. And you do that when you need to buy yourself scalability and you need to buy yourself some margin. But for us, working with a small company at the beginning, a small friendly family firm that could handle a lot of those problems and can walk us through this kind of complex new world of production was completely invaluable. And I think that's something that maybe startups that are used to Amazon Web Services and things like that could learn from. I think we still use Amazon Web Services, but we do that because we completely understand hosting. Like I understand how to run a server, I understand how to manage a Linux box, and I understand how to use system configuration tools and things like that. We didn't understand shipping in the slightest, and so we needed that personal touch at the beginning. We needed that expert guidance through that world. And we would found it very, very difficult, I think, to get it off the ground without people who could solve problems in that way. That's a photo from the launch of Newspaper Club, where we printed 20 newspapers for friends mostly. We put the service out there, we're like, here you go, they want to make a newspaper, and people came along. These have sort of become known in Newspaper Club history as kind of the sarcasm months, where the three of us who founded it really weren't very good at customer service. And if you came to us with a problem, we assumed you hadn't read the site very well, or that we weren't, you were incompetent rather than us. We'd put our bloody lives into this for the last 6 months. You must have misunderstood there's something here. Our first complaint, I think, we got the email. Russell and I, one of my co-founders, we looked at each other and I could see what he was thinking, he could see what I was thinking. Basically, fuck it, let's shut it down. This isn't going to work. And we needed a weapon to basically get us through. We needed someone who was going to handle these problems in a way that us co-founders who were used to kind of dealing in vagaries and thinking in big picture and things like that couldn't do. We needed Anne Ward. Anne was our first employee and is now our CEO. And she just solves these problems and with a smile on her face like nothing else. We needed to basically, as co-founders, we needed to step back and leave someone who had the right mindset to solve these problems to do it. And I asked Anne what things she did in the beginning of Newspaper Club that completely changed the way we did customer service. She described her customer service process as paranoia-driven customer support, where she would assume basically everything was going to go wrong all the time, to the point where she in the first month she would lie awake at night, kind of worrying about issues which hadn't arisen yet. She said that she tried to put in processes to prevent problems before they happened, which sounds really obvious, but when you're flying by the seat of your pants as a small company, you forget to kind of go back and fix the thing that originally caused the problem. You forget to kind of go back and kind of say, why did that happen, why did that happen, why did that happen, get back to kind of, changing the bit on your site or fixing the way you describe something. She said, we under-promise and we over-deliver, and I think that was really important. With our delivery times, most people probably get their papers within 2 to 3 days. We say 5 to 7 on the site. When they turn up early, everyone's very happy. If it's the other way around, they wouldn't be happy. It's good to surprise people in a good way. And, if it all goes wrong, you can kind of just fess up and move on, be honest, we made a mistake, sorry, take your money. We would much rather give you your money back and sort of, say, sorry, this just hasn't worked. We've made some big problems. Sometimes people come in all guns blazing, and we just say to them, we solve their problem, and we attack it methodically, and they come out smiling. I think as long as you're very honest in your communications, and you're very respectful that the issue the person is having is a very genuine issue, then you can solve most problems with customer service and with that attitude. It's always possible to fix these problems, and if you can't, give them the money back. I think also one of the things we developed policies for customer service that meant that you remove the kind of personal attack aspect of it. So we knew that when someone had a problem with this, we could look at the policy and go, what did that say? Rather than thinking, oh God, they hate Newspaper Club. This is something I've spent my life building, or it removes that thing, and you can look at the kind of document and come to a kind of consistent, sort of rational approach about how to solve a problem. So number 3, physical failure modes are completely different. When Twitter goes down for an hour, you can't tweet, sorry about that. You'll probably tweet in an hour's time, it'll be okay. If we mess up your print run, we've kind of ruined your kind of creative project, and it's really expensive to put it right. It costs us loads of money, all of our margin disappears, and you're upset, rightly so. This is a project we did as the agency that started Newspaper Club, called the Really Interesting Group, and this was a silly Christmas gag where basically we would 3D print a snowman where the size of the head was proportional to the number of Twitter followers you had. These were 3D printed on demand. We would basically generate batches of about 60. We'd send them to a 3D print house. And we'd generate all the STL files, etc., send them on. And then we'd send them back to you. It was £19.50, I think. It was they've done this on a Christmas tree. This is a silly gag, but for us, it was an interesting way of exploring the world of 3D printing. This project ran for about a month and a half in the lead up to Christmas, about 4 years ago. And we didn't make any money on it, even though we'd built in healthy margin for ourselves, because we ruined one of the batches. We accidentally printed them all with heads that were a factor of 10s too small, something like that. There was a rounding error, blah, blah, blah. So we made no money on this project. That is a completely different failure mode to the world in which we were used to dealing with digital objects. I think it's important to consider what the worst unboxing experience for your product could be. Like, what is the worst thing that could happen when someone opens their package and has a look at your brand new, Internet of Things object or connected device? This is a little different, but we basically broke these people's new office because no one could get in the door, because we'd sent 25,000 newspapers to them, and they didn't really understand how many 25,000 newspapers was. So when they turned up on 3 pallets and didn't have a pallet loading bay and didn't really know what to do, no one could get into the office door, no one could get past reception, there were clients who couldn't sit down, etc. And they were rightly upset because we didn't warn them that that was going to be that big, or that you'd need a pallet loading bay, because we didn't really know, we hadn't really considered it. I guess that is, for us, that's the worst. That's the worst kind of unboxing experience, to kind of ruined your office. We use machines like this that are the size of warehouses. When they break, someone gets on a plane from Germany and they come to fix it, and they are invariably wearing a polo shirt and being quite grumpy about it. We've tried with Newspaper Club. We've tried to show this. We've tried to surface what you're dealing with here is not this kind of smooth, neat world of kind of digital objects and digital services. You're dealing with dirty, messy, physical stuff with ink and with grumpy people who've just got on a plane at 3 a.m. and with large machines that regularly break. I think it's not to say that in any way sort of mitigates our responsibilities or anything around it. It's just that by surfacing this stuff and sort of celebrating your machinery, sort of showing it off and showing off your process and showing off that this is like a dirty physical kind of world you're playing in now, people give you a lot more room for maneuver when things go wrong. They really understand it. Oh yeah, okay, I understand that this is a machine the size of three houses, and fixing it is complicated and you didn't mess up. It's like these things happen, it's okay. I think my last thing is about how, I'm sort of speeding through this and conscious of time, that digital businesses think differently. There are lots of businesses that combine digital and physical aspects now. Newspaper Club is one end of the scale, but then you've got all sorts of other products that are maybe more obviously connected to the web. But I think there's a difference between the companies that grew out of the web and grew out of the digital world and the companies that didn't. Things for us like sort of fast iteration and openness and testing with real data and testing assumptions in live are in our DNA. They're things that we do because we're used to doing them because we've built websites since for the last decade and a half. There's no reason why a printer or a newspaper group couldn't have started Newspaper Club, but they didn't because they didn't see what in the web what we saw. And I think we can use that to our advantage. We didn't know anything about managing the physical world, but we've sort of learned it as we go. And the canon of knowledge around physical infrastructure and physical manufacturing processes is 200 years old, something like that. There is a lot to draw upon. There's a lot of systems in place for helping you through this world. The canon of knowledge about web infrastructure and web processes and building good web services is a tenth of that. It's 20 years max. And if you deeply understand the web and you deeply understand that world, I think it's easier to learn the physical stuff. And I think you can use that as an advantage. I think you can see the way Google and Amazon tackle fulfillment, in Amazon's case, and cars in Google's case, versus the way Nissan and Tesco tackle those problems. They just come to it with a very different mindset. And I think that mindset is the thing that will, win is a strong word, but I think will help a lot in the 21st century. So I think you can take advantage of that. If you realize that you have the web on your side, then the physical stuff, you will sort it out. It will be okay. I think it's actually much harder for large companies with a big kind of history of manufacturing to move into the digital space. That's it. Thank you for listening.